What happens when a former slave becomes a slaveholder? Beat. Edward P. Jones drags us into that thorny question with prose that stings and soothes in equal measure. 1. An unlikely master. Henry Townsend's rise. The story opens in antebellum Manchester County, Virginia, where Henry Townsend, once enslaved, has bought his emphasis, freedom, and, with disturbing confidence, purchased slaves of his own. Beat. We meet him in the last moments of his life, an early reminder that the novel will move backward and forward through time like a restless tide. Beat. Henry's mentor, William Robbins, the county's most powerful white planter, tutors him in the brutal arithmetic of ownership. Land plus labor equals legacy. Beat. Henry's wife, Caldonia, educated and proud, reluctantly accepts the plantation's logic, promising her dying husband that she will keep their human property intact. Beat. Jones refuses to grant us the comforts of moral distance. He shows Henry supervising Moses, the lead field hand who once taught him to plough. Beat. The inversion is painful. Henry imitates the very system that once bound him, convinced that running a good farm can soften its cruelty. Beat. Yet, at the auction block, he haggles over Elias, a towering carpenter desperate to reunite with his pregnant wife, Loretta. Beat. The scene lands with a sickening thud. Henry's success is measured in shackles. Beat. Around him, a lattice of minor characters takes shape. Augustus Townsend, Henry's father, who carves exquisite walking sticks and cannot fathom his son's choices. Fern Elston, the free black teacher whose genteel parlour masks fierce intellect. And Sheriff John Skiffington, sworn to enforce slave law though his conscience quivers. Beat. Every interaction feels double-edged because Jones sketches each person from within and without, catching the flicker of doubt behind practiced roles. Beat. By the end of this section, Henry is buried. The plantation slips into Caldonia's hands, and the stage is set for a slow unraveling. Beat. What began as a tale of self-made triumph becomes a dark meditation on how power reshapes even those who once longed only for emphasis, liberation. 2. Lines blurred, the morality of ownership. With Henry gone, the fragile order of the Townsend plantation splinters. Beat. Moses, sensing opportunity, takes to strolling up to the big house under the pretext of nightly reports, drawing dangerously close to Caldonia's solitude. Beat. Jones paints their encounters in humid, moonlit strokes, a reminder that desire can metastasize into manipulation. Beat. Outside the estate, we witness Sheriff Skiffington and his deputy, Harvey Travis, patrol the county roads. Skiffington clings to the law as a shield for his trembling soul, yet Travis relishes violence, turning manhunts into sport. Beat. The moral ledger grows ever more tangled when Skiffington's wife, Winifred, inherits two slaves she never knew existed. Her discomfort is acute, but societal gravity pins her in place, forcing uneasy complicity. Beat. Jones widens the lens to expose a broader economy of betrayal. Slave patrollers who pocket fugitives' shoes, traders who break families with ledger book detachment, even free blacks who fabricate papers to rent out their enslaved kin. Beat. In such a world, virtue is a luxury few can afford, and sin is measured in degrees, not absolutes. Beat. The section's pivotal episode arrives when Elias attempts escape after the death of his newborn child. Beat. Captured and returned, he is fastened to a cage in the yard for days, enduring torrential rain and biting flies. Beat. Jones narrates the ordeal with clinical restraint, trusting the reader's horror to fill the silence. Beat. Caledonia watches from her window, torn between sympathy and the imperative to maintain order. Beat. Her eventual decision, to free Elias from the cage but keep him enslaved, embodies the novel's central paradox: how a person can do partial kindness while sustaining overarching cruelty. Beat. Throughout, Jones seeds small moments of resistance: a coded hymn hummed in the cornrows, an elderly slave who deliberately miscounts seedlings, a white child who shares biscuits through a fence hole. Beat. These gestures do not upend the system, but they crack it, letting light seep through. Beat. We are reminded, without sermon, that the boundary between victim and oppressor is as fragile as breath, and the cost of crossing it is measured in emphasis. Conscience. 3. Fractured lives across shifting time. One of Jones's bravest choices is narrative fragmentation. Beat. Years leap forward without warning. Characters are introduced, disappear, and reappear decades later in a single paragraph. Beat. This mosaic structure mimics memory itself, unreliable, partial, yet stubbornly insistent. Beat. We glimpse the future of young Calvin, Caledonia's twin brother, who wanders north after emancipation and dies obscurely in a Boston boarding house, notebooks of philosophical musings piled beside him. Beat. We meet Jebediah Dickinson, a charismatic drifter who arrives with forged freedom papers, seduces Caledonia's trust, and nearly topples the estate's last semblance of stability before his deceit unravels. Beat. Jones rewinds to the childhood of Moses, revealing a minor theft that earned him a lifelong scar, then flashes forward to his final flight into the Blue Ridge Mountains, half mad with fever, pursued by dogs and the memory of every lash he ever delivered as overseer. Beat. The dislocation asks listeners to assemble causality, heightening engagement, while underscoring the randomness that governs enslaved existence. Beat. In one breathtaking aside, Jones recounts how a census taker, decades later, will discover a slave bill of sale tucked in an attic trunk. The archivist files it away, oblivious to the human ache encoded in each line of ink. Beat. This metafictional flourish enlarges the canvas. The novel is not only about what happened, but about how history is recorded, preserved, and misunderstood. Beat. Yet amid temporal drift, emotional through lines endure. Augustus Townsend, illegally kidnapped into bondage while carrying his walking sticks north to sell, becomes the novel's moral barometer. Beat. His fate, shipped to Louisiana, dying nameless on a sugar plantation, exposes the law's impotence when profit reigns. Beat. Fern Elston's parlor lessons surface years later in the recollections of grown students who will teach their own children under Reconstruction. Beat. By layering past, present, and future, Jones invites us to feel time's sedimentary weight. Beat. Every moment is haunted by echoes of what precedes and what will follow, reminding us that the known world is always partly emphasis unknowable. 4. Legacy and the price of forgetting. As the novel hurtles toward its quiet conclusion, Jones shifts focus from immediate drama to lingering aftermath. Beat. Caledonia, overwhelmed, gradually sells her slaves, piece by piece, rationalizing each transaction as mercy. Beat. In doing so, she dissolves the community Henry worked to build, scattering families across the South. Beat. Her final gesture is to grant freedom to the child of a woman she once owned, a small atonement that cannot mend what has been shattered. Beat. Sheriff Skiffington meets his end, defending the letter of slave law during a courthouse shootout, a tragic embodiment of devotion to a doomed code. Beat. The deed barely ripples through Manchester County. New sheriffs arrive, New ordinances pass, and the wheel grinds onward. Beat. Jones's narration zooms decades ahead to the turn of the 20th century, where tourists picnic on former plantation grounds, oblivious to the unmarked graves beneath their blankets. Beat. A local entrepreneur purchases Moses's abandoned cabin, marketing it as authentic slave quarters for northern sightseers. Beat. History becomes commodity, sanded smooth for easy consumption. Beat. Yet the land remembers. Elias's descendants, living in Richmond tenements, still hum his favorite field tune without knowing its origin. Beat. Fern Elston's lesson books, water-stained but legible, are discovered in a church basement, inspiring a pastor to found a literacy mission. Beat. In these quiet aftershocks, Jones suggests that pain can transmogrify into resolve, if not into justice. Beat. The section culminates in a haunting image. A cartographer updates a county map, erasing the boundary lines of defunct plantations. Beat. With a few strokes, centuries of exploitation vanish from official sight, proving that forgetting is often a sanctioned institutional act. Beat. Jones leaves us asking what stories survive, who gets to tell them, and at what cost to collective emphasis, memory.